Today I'll show you how I got rid of my diesel heater fuel tank by installing a diesel heater fuel line quick disconnect kit. I don't need to squeeze in the boot of my Jayco Swan anymore to fill my diesel heater fuel tank using a jerry can and funnel, because now the jerry can is my fuel tank. It's pretty easy to disconnect and reconnect to with a click of a button. So let's get started. I bought one of these diesel heater fuel line quick disconnect kits off eBay. I went for the plastic one because it'll be inside my boot, but if you're mounting yours outside, then you'll need a metal one because of the UV rays. The one I bought came with everything that was needed for installation. It has the quick disconnect fittings, clamps and a hose to fit it to the existing nylon fuel line. I also bought a 1 metre pull tie down from Bunnings, the local hardware store, to hold the jerry can in place. For the installation, all the tools I used were a drill with a 7mm drill bit, a driver with an 8mm nut driver socket, a Phillips head screwdriver, some long nose pliers, a measuring tape, marker and a hacksaw. For details about where I bought the quick disconnect kit, a list of the tools I used and written instructions, check out the link in the description below. Now if you didn't get a fuel standpipe to install with your diesel heater when you put it in first, and instead had some of these nozzle connectors for either the bottom or the side, check out the same link. It has the details. The fuel standpipes are only a few dollars online. So the first thing I did was using the Phillips head screwdriver to undo the hose clamps and remove the fuel line from the fuel tank. I just made sure I popped it up somewhere out of the way so it wasn't going to spill any diesel that was in the fuel line. Then I used the driver with its socket to undo the self-tapping screws that were holding the fuel tank in place. Next I used the Phillips head screwdriver to remove the hose clamp and then disconnect the previous fuel line connector. I set aside this hose clamp because it was a screw type. The ones that came with the quick disconnect kit were the clamp type, and I figured having these screw ones would be easier to reinstall with the jerry can later on, screwing it in under the boot as opposed to trying to clamp it with the pliers. Then I used the driver socket to undo the self-tapping screws to remove the fuel standpipe from the fuel tank. Next I got out the tape measure and measured the height of the jerry can. Now the reason I did this is because I then marked and cut the fuel standpipe with the hacksaw so that it was beveled at a 45-degree angle, but with a length about 50mm or 2 inches from the bottom of the new tank. Next it was a case of using the rubber gasket from the fuel standpipe as a template to see where the fuel standpipe would sit. So then I got the drill with the 7mm drill bit to create a hole large enough for the widest part of the pipe to easily fit through. So now it was time to fix one side of the quick disconnect fitting to the fuel standpipe. The good thing about these quick disconnect kits are that both sides are valved. So unless both sides are connected, no fuel escapes from either end. So this basically means it doesn't really matter which side you choose to connect to the standpipe and which side goes to the fuel line. So I joined one piece to the fuel standpipe using the supplied hose and used the long nosed pliers to crimp the hose clamps shut. So now we're up to attaching the standpipe to the jerry can. To attach the fuel standpipe to the jerry can, I reused the self-tapping screws from the original fuel tank. I used the driver and socket again. So a big hint though, before you do this, confirm the orientation of the nozzle of the fuel standpipe so that it will point to the direction you want once it's in its location. Now with that out of the way, it was time to attach the other side of the quick disconnect fitting to the fuel line. To make this as easy as possible, I added the hose to the quick disconnect fitting first and then reused the screw hose clamps from the original tank. I figured it'd be easier to use the screwdriver inside the boot rather than crimping the supplied hose clamps. Now it was time to create a tie down point. To do this, I just draped the pull tie down over the jerry can so I could make sure the latch was in the right spot. After marking the strap, I drilled some pilot holes into where the jerry can would live. In our Jayco Swan, the boot was ridged, so I made sure I went into the trough rather than the peaks of the ridges so that the heads of the screws wouldn't be rubbing up against the jerry can. Then I pushed the screws through the strap and screwed it in place. And once I was happy that the strap was the right length, I put some washers in to hold it in place so it wouldn't pull through the screws. And we're done. Installing a diesel heater fuel line quick disconnect kit was pretty straightforward, and I think it's well worth the money. It makes it easier to fill the tank on my diesel heater, and it saves space too. My boot is a whole lot neater, but not only that, now if I need to put diesel in the diesel heater fuel tank, all I need to do is take it out and fill it outside. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to press like, otherwise subscribe for more Jayco camper trailer hints, tips, mods and DIY repairs.